Welcome back. We're wrapping up our discussion on vaccines and how do we live in society knowing COVID is here. It's a serious virus. Should we have separation between vaxxed and unvaxxed individuals? Scott, before the break, we were discussing a little bit of what Jonathan said, but he brought up like a fair point that, is offering like at some point people want to move past the fear, and there are people who are actually fearful of this virus. And yes, some of it definitely could be attributed to the government encouraging fear, or I shouldn't say encouraging, but with some of the rhetoric from the government, people are scared. I mean, even the recent election, we've heard some very strong rhetoric from Justin Trudeau on the trail. People are concerned. But is not furnishing a vaccine, a proof of vaccination, if people are concerned, shouldn't that just be their right to congregate with whom they want based on the information they can collect from people?
Absolutely. We live in a free society. People are allowed to congregate with whom they will. It's a different matter for companies to exclude people based on their identity. And that is identifying yourself, and it's identifying yourself with what used to be called private health information. So I regard it already as a serious encroachment into Canadians' lives. And I think that the government has no business in there, and I can't see once it's encroached into that space how we push it back out of it. Because the technology that follows that, which is already in existence for monitoring, surveilling electronically, that is coming in, and we've already read, if you've looked at the Ottawa Citizen, that they are using propaganda techniques that they were employing in Afghanistan. They're using that against their own people. Likewise, there's going to be visual scans of faces. That's on the books for the federal government. I don't think that this incursion into our rights and freedoms, that there are any plans to pull that back.
So this is like a slippery slope that we should just halt it early? Is that what you're suggesting?
It's not halting it early. It never ought to have been brought into force, in my view. I think it was an overreach from the beginning. It was done out of fear. It was done, I assume, out of ignorance, and I understood it initially. But once it continued on, the benchmark kept moving, and eventually the only way we were going to return to normal was to get the shot. But the shots don't stop you from getting this, and they don't stop it from being transmitted, and the variants evolve more quickly than any technology that we can come to stop it. So I just wonder when the emergency will end, and I can't see it ending. As I say, they originally wanted to stop the system from being overloaded, the healthcare system.
And we're still there. We're still there.
Not only are we still there, because we've always been at capacity in Canada, because that's the nature of socialized medicine. We've just laid off thousands, or who have refused to take it, and thereby provoked the crisis that we're seeking to avoid. Now, who's the problem here? Is it really the people who are reluctant to take vaccines for any number of reasons? Or is it the government that's assaulting the civil liberties that Jonathan is so worried about?
Well, Jonathan, I'll let you respond to that.
So, look, I obviously I disagree with Dr. Masson on a few things here. Look, including the risk. If the CDC data suggests that if you do get vaccinated, I think on average you're 29 times less likely to be hospitalized or die from COVID-19. It is absolutely true that you can still get the disease, absolutely true that you can still transmit the disease even if you're vaccinated. Those things are true, but you are just much less likely to die or to be seriously ill from COVID. So right. I think that's. However, I think Scott makes an excellent point when he talks about the general climate of distrust in which this is taking place. These are, to my mind, somewhat, not entirely, but somewhat separate issues, that the government is encroaching on civil liberties in many areas. And I think maybe one thing we would agree on is that the vaccine, certainly the vaccine passport mandates, they come about in a political climate in which people are already suspicious of the government doing this kind of stuff. Now, it's obviously an unrelated issue, but if you look at the two separate pieces of legislation that the federal government, federal government is not directly involved with the mandates and stuff, which is more provincial, but you have two pieces of legislation in which the federal government over the last year has proposed to regulate our speech. This is Justin Trudeau's Liberal government. This has nothing to do with COVID. However, if you are somebody who has a conservative disposition and you see the government is trying to limit what we are allowed to say, That hardly lends itself to an attitude of trust when the next day a public health officer says, oh, by the way, you have to get vaccinated, and we're going to remove items from, we're going to, lobby to remove items from social media that suggest otherwise. I'm pro-vax, but I totally get why people are suspicious of government motives on this or any other subject.